Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Pundits is back. For the first time since the pandemic began, we have the leading lights of New Haven journalism here to talk about what's been going on the last week, last 2 weeks, and what do we make of all this?
The world is on fire.
The world is on fire, and so is this panel. This is the pundit panel on fire.
We're on fire because it's hot in this room. What is going on?
And we'll get to that. Babs Rawls, and it's not global warming. It's kind of an ongoing
The
fight
heat just
with
really
our
works
landlady.
well here.
Babs Rawls-Ivy, the host of Love Babs, Love Talk, editor of Inner City News, on so many boards and commissions in town that it's a quicker list to just say what she's not on. Freed from jury duty moments ago live. Markeisha Rick, veteran New Haven journalist, national journalist, and mentor to the next generation. So glad to have her back in the studio. And Lucy Gumman, the editor of New Haven Arts.
The arts paper, New Haven.
The arts paper,
Call
New
it
Haven.
Whatever you want, Paul.
No, I want to call it the right thing. And the founding station manager of WNHH-FM and the host of the weekly art show on Friday called
Arts Respond.
Arts
Or
Respond.
really whatever you want it to be.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. So I had one question I wanted to ask everybody. What's your next flight out of New Haven? Where are you headed?
Florida. I'm gonna
From
go
Tweed?
probably Florida at some point because I'm like, where were these flights at when I was learning to swim in 2019?
Where were they?
I could have saved so much money.
I could have went with you.
So in other
I
words,
could
you're
have
gonna
took
be
you all with
Are
me.
you going to fly out of Tweed?
Oh,
To where in Florida?
probably to Sarasota, but I'm talking to some of my line sisters because I will have been in the Delta Sigma Theta. Babs and I shared sorority for 20 years this month.
Wow.
Mine will be 40 in November.
Yeah, so we were planning a trip, and that trip's not gonna happen. But me and some of my closer line sisters, we're gonna get together. We're
Because
probably
the three
going
of
to
you
Florida.
fly. I don't fly. I was
Oh,
last
yeah,
at.
you
don't fly?
Well,
Or
I'm
you don't
not against
enjoy
flying.
flying.
I'm just not into
It's not your
traveling.
thing.
I did go to Tweed once 11 years ago. I had an anti-Semitic experience at TSA. So I'm kind of not that interested in walking back, even though I'm sure they're all gone. But I'm just not a big flyer.
Now they're mean to everyone.
But Babs or Lucy, you folks gonna be flying out of Tweed anytime soon?
I think I
Absolutely.
might. Yeah.
I might
I think
purposely
so.
fly like trips to Florida that I probably wouldn't have taken because I don't want to have to navigate going to Bradley or going somewhere to New York and those of you who know me know that I've done that haul and I've even written about it here, taking all of the modes of transportation to get to the airport.
Because they had no last mile.
Exactly.
In a snowstorm.
So I've never flown out of Tweed actually. And that
It is amazingly convenient.
Exactly. It's super
I
convenient.
flew out of
As long
Tweed
as you don't bring
many
tefillin
years
through
ago.
TSA. Uh-huh.
Many years ago. Like,
Yeah.
20
So
some odd
I'm-
years ago.
I will say I flew out of Tweed. I've done it a couple times actually, and it's incredibly convenient. I did it for a wedding in Dallas, so I had to connect in Philly.
I think because the mask, you need to get real close to the mic
Oh,
because I
yeah.
can't hear you.
I'm gonna get very intimate with the mic.
Okay.
Is this better?
Gonna molest
Yeah.
the mic with your
a little bit. This is better. Yeah, I mean, I am excited. I have feelings about Tweed and should I be doing this because it's also terrible for the environment. But I'm excited.
But
you
it's
drove-
better than
if
you
you
going to
drove
Bradley
to
or
Bradley,
New York.
it'd be
Yeah.
a lot
That's
worse.
right. And I will also say I have a girlfriend who's a journalist in Raleigh. Nashville is just a really
Yeah, I
cool
have friends
city.
in Raleigh.
And
Well, you
so that
mentioned
I'm
Raleigh because the
excited
news
about.
this week
Yes.
was that 3 more locations have been added
Chicago, which
to the
I've never been
destinations that
to,
Avelo
other than the
Airlines
airport.
flies from New Haven.
Mhm.
So now, as of only 4 months ago, there were 0 cities you could fly to from New Haven. Over the last 40 or 50 years, it was usually between 0 and 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden,
We're a whole
you
new
could
world.
fly to 13 communities. And what was significant about this week is when they added Chicago, D.C., and Raleigh, they weren't adding just leisure travel sites. So for all this time in New Haven, for the last half century, business communities wanted there to be more air service because that'll help us get jobs and business. Every time they bring on an airline, it lasted 7 minutes, and there just wasn't enough demand. But now they went to the leisure market where people want to go on vacation, and they're booming. And it's working for now.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, I just mentioned, so it's D.C., Chicago, and Raleigh are big hubs where you can transfer to other places. So now you can fly to Tweed, not just go on a vacation in one place, but you can now go and connect the flights anywhere,
Right.
which is a big, big deal. And it's also Raleigh, Durham is the Research Triangle, so that's going to be academic connections. Chicago, D.C., there's a lot of business to do. But I just named
There's
3.
also a lot of government
Yeah.
from DC.
So the question is, can you name the other 10, anyone? I just named the 3 new ones. What are the other 10 cities you can
was
fly to
like-
from New Haven?
A bunch
Savannah.
in Florida, Savannah, Sarasota, Jacksonville, I think.
Now, Savannah is in South Carolina, but it is on the
Oh,
list.
sorry.
It is on the list.
Charleston.
It is on
I
the
mean,
list.
I meant, yeah.
I don't,
Charleston.
I don't see Jacksonville here. Charleston, South Carolina, so we got 2.
Which all work for me. I as y'all know, I'm a Southerner, so most of my destinations are all part South. And not for nothing, I tend to train to DC. But we all know train travel is patient travel. So
Girl.
Comfy.
if I could I would pay, like, depending on what it is, it's usually comparable, like, to fly between
Well, early on, they're giving you
DC
low
and-
flights, too.
Yeah, so it's usually
so-
comparable to just fly into DC. So I would totally do that.
So we've got Sarasota, we got Charleston, we got Savannah.
Miami. Is
No, we don't have
Miami
Miami. We don't go to Miami.
Darn it, I need that
I
flight to
feel
Miami.
like
That's
Flor-
in trouble.
Miami is great. In
I'd go
spite
to
of Florida,
Charleston,
not
though.
because of it, yeah.
I'd
I
hop
So
go
what
to
other
Charleston.
cities
I
you
can
missing,
get to-
folks? There are 5 more locations in Florida. I'll give you a hint.
Gosh.
MICKEY.
Oh gosh, Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando.
Of course.
Right,
There's
right,
no
right.
flying to Florida without flying to Orlando. Like, that's where all the
Okay,
people want to
the
go.
other Floridas are Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, and Palm
Fort
Beach,
Myers
and
makes sense.
Tampa.
Those are all big.
And then in South Carolina, we
It's
got
so
the 2.
interesting that they're
Savannah,
going to
Jersey.
fly to Tampa, because Tampa and Sarasota are quite close to, like, they're near each other. So
So there's-
sometimes when people are flying into that area, they'll either fly into Sarasota direct or they'll fly into Tampa, depending on the cost.
And then the last location is one where we're sending 2 of our reporters are going to have a fun weekend to see on the
Ooh.
Independent to find out what you could do in the city where there's a lot of glittery gold on
Nashville,
stage.
right?
Nashville,
Yeah.
Oh,
Tennessee.
send me. I'll go with them. They need chaperones.
They do.
Well, they were going to do a word on the street for you there.
That's right.
I've got a friend who teaches at Nashville in Tennessee.
I
one of the
ran
schools.
the country music half marathon in Nashville.
There's a country music camp, man.
There's a country music
How'd you
half
do?
marathon. Didn't die.
All right. And evidence.
That's
and
right.
and it's a pre-COVID thing. So a stranger handed me an orange slice, and there is a picture of me somewhere with an orange slice in my mouth running, and I don't know where those people's hands had been, but I didn't die. Would I do that today? No.
No.
So will people die? So Lucy brought up the G word. Should she feel guilty flying? But more importantly than guilt, is this something to cheer the way the business community has made it a jihad for the last 50 years that we need this kind of air travel to boost our economy?
Did you say jihad?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has been. Like, you talk to these people, they get
Isn't
a little
jihad
crazy.
with a J?
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. Like, I've talked to some
Okay.
of these guys.
Focus.
Like, they believe. I say, well, are you sure? Because, when when United flew to Chicago, that lasted 5 minutes. Are you sure it's going to work? And you sure it's going to bring jobs? And they're going to, this one guy, I remember in one forum, he was going to choke me for even asking the question, right? So they believe. And what I love covering about tweet is that I'm an agnostic. Everyone has
You're like,
their-
I don't care
their
whether y'all do
views.
this or
It's not
not.
about care. I'm not sure who's right. Because the business people are so sure it's going to create all this jobs to boost the economy. All their studies are bogus. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but the studies are bogus. And then the neighbors are all mad. And I say, well, you move there. It's an airport. But I care about the environment, and there are wetlands there. And, it's a very complicated
And it
question
floods.
about the
It
It
environment.
floods. It legitimately floods.
Yeah, there won't. People say, will there be that land in 50 years? So are you cheering, Lucy? Were you saying, yay, 13 cities? I mean, it's kind of exciting when you get in their frame of
No.
mind. Like, it is amazing that in just 4 months that we're now in 13 cities, and this thing people wanted 50 years it couldn't happen is happening. So if you're from their point of view, it's incredibly exciting that we're now going to be connected to all these places you could travel. Were you cheering, like you have pom-poms out, Lucy?
No.
How come?
The pom poms, they were not out.
No? Oh.
So there.
I can get close to
yeah.
the mic because I really can't hear you.
Okay.
You say.
Here, I can do this. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get real close. So my roommate was very excited about
We're protecting
about tweet-
identities here. Okay. Okay.
But no. New Haven Independent managing editor Tom Breen is very, very excited. I'm less excited because I feel a little bit of guilt. I feel this big boulder that is climate catastrophe rolling toward me. But I'm also a little bit excited because I want to, a good friend of mine is in Raleigh. I want to see her. I like the idea of being able to fly to BWI, even though train, is really not hard from New Haven.
And plus,
yeah.
we're supposed to think infrastructure is good, right?
But I
We
do
like-
not have my
sure.
pom poms.
You didn't have your pop up. Yeah, I think
No,
I'm with you. It's
no.
complicated, but we do tend to like infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
We like being connected. We like being able to travel and do business. So this asthma thing is, it's interesting
Yeah.
about the environment. So let me read you what two independent people
I know
posted.
those comments. I read those.
Yeah.
So Callisto said, so is this part of Eloqua's putative plan to reduce New Haven's greenhouse gas emissions, noise pollution, particulate pollution, increased asthma rate, all to send profits to Goldman Sachs, which is run the airport and the airline. But Steve, who's like one of these people who will rip your neck out if you say that the world is not going to be all flowers and roses once we have the airport, he says, Callisto, what do you mean increased asthma rates? To accuse Tweed of this malady is bypassing the real cause of air pollution, I-95, I-91, 2 highways, tons of car and truck traffic. Touche. Fewer trucks, more planes. Adding to that are the local loud pickup trucks that have altered their exhaust systems to increase noise, and when that is done, they bypass emission systems. Just say you don't like Tweed. Don't make it creating a death zone. The number of flights at Tweed will always be much lower than other commercial airports, including Bradley, that are, by the way, not causing widespread illness. And also, one thing I looked at, and again, I never know who's right, somebody who studies this says, in fact, flying, Lucy, if you were to drive yourself, which you don't do, but if you drive yourself somewhere instead of fly, you're creating more greenhouse gases. So flying is polluting, but sometimes it is less polluting than the alternatives, whether it's trucks or more than one vehicle. However,
But if I took public transit,
right, compared
Paul,
to public transit,
Yeah.
and that's why I don't have my pom-poms out. My pom-poms are for trains and buses.
Yeah.
But it's not always that simple. That sometimes it first of all, mass transit system is totally underinvested in our country. And
deeply.
until that changes, you really can't get a lot of places of public transit.
And we say until that changes, like people are, like our government and our governments are collectively ever working to change that.
Yeah.
They are the folks who are influencing our government to make the policies that they make around transportation don't want public transportation. They want everybody to drive a gas guzzling, how are those gas prices doing? Gas guzzling vehicle, and they want more roads and they want more highways, and that's all they care about. Like they act like you are speaking Greek when you start talking about like a high-speed train. Like, and then every little town wants to stop on said high-speed train. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Babs, do you have fun flying?
I actually like flying. I appreciate that I don't have to go far to go where I want to go. I mean, I have friends all
fun to go
down
places,
the
right?
corridor, and I'd like to go see them
Yeah.
without it being a whole
5 hours in a
So
car.
are you excited then that New Haven
5
gets
hours
to
on
be
a
more
train.
connected, get kind of we're stepping up our
Listen,
game?
I served on the National League of Cities under Transportation
Really?
committee when I was older, and one of the things that I was excited about in those days when Henry was running the daggone airport, and we were talking about how can we grow this gem of an airport, because we kept throwing money at it, and the fight about expanding it. You're right, we couldn't hold airlines. But we knew it was a gem. We knew it would be a bond for this particular part of Connecticut, of the region, right? And so now I think it's starting to sort of come into its own. If this trajectory stays,
I do think it'll stay. So Avella's a startup, and we're kind of like, it's almost like being with the startup, which is kind of fun too, even though they're bankrolled by Goldman Sachs. But I mean, but it's kind of interesting to see a startup do something kind of gutsy. They're, every week their map changes. They're on the West Coast, East Coast. They're getting close to the middle. They want to make the play to become the next JetBlue. And I think the reason your roommate was excited because he got to be there and see how excited the people doing it are. Because I don't think these are like evil people on either side, right? It's just people have different views about what works and what makes sense. Right. And even though I don't relate to the people pushing the airlines, I get the buzz. Like, it's kind of excited. They tried to do this a long time. They feel it's going to make New Haven a better city and connect us more. And wow, we went from 0 to 13 in 4 months. And people are flying in and out of New Haven, going places.
I can't wait to go. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to go to Charleston. I haven't been to Charleston in years, and I haven't gone because it's such a process to get there.
Yeah.
But now I could just drive my car, park my car, get on a plane, go.
I have a friend who used to live in Silicon Valley, just recently moved to Stony Creek, and he's so excited about this. He said he went flying, and they got home door to door from the plane landed in 17 minutes.
Wow.
I mean, that's just amazing.
Like it's efficient.
Like I could go for a weekend and not have to make it a week trip because the travel is so
right.
laborious.
So will you allow Maya and Nora to do a word on the street from Nashville when they're there for the New Haven Independent on a hot story?
Oh, absolutely.
All
But
right.
she
She's
wants
she's
to
trying
go
to be
with
on the
them.
street though.
And you're hearing that on Pundits Thursday, back from the
I can
I
go.
guess the
I can do a show.
pandemic's over because Pundits is
Back
back.
from
The dead.
no, we weren't dead.
Comatose.
Hibernation.
From hibernation. On Dateline, New Haven, WNHH FM 103.5 M live, Steam New Haven Independent. So I got a pressing question out of the news this week. Would you rather your New Haven police officer to get plastered, drive to a bar and get plastered with his fellow officers, or sit home and take a bong hit?
Is he off duty?
Yes.
Bong hit.
Yeah, bong hit.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the new policy passed this week from the New Haven Police Department says that he can go to his bar and get plastered with his friends getting drunk, but he can't stay at home and take a bong hit. Even though recreational use of cannabis is legal in New Haven now, and I hope I have this right. You'll hear when you get your mate later because he covered it. But they said you can't smoke pot or eat edibles. They said because it's federal, it's not on the federal schedule. I love that word, schedule. Federal schedule of approved drugs.
I just find it amazing that alcohol use and driving is such a huge
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
And I've
And a
never,
lot of
I've
the cops
never
have been
seen,
drunk driving.
I've
yeah.
never seen anybody smoke pot. Alcohol use and driving is such a huge
Yes.
Some feedback.
problem.
Yeah, Harry, we
Yes.
got a weird feedback there.
I've never seen anybody get high, get behind a car, and crash. I've just never seen it.
And of course, I was a little skewed and biased in my way of framing the question. One of them sitting home, just chilling, while the other one's going to have to
But
get down a wheel.
I've never seen anybody get in a car accident from being high.
And also, one of
from
our readers
marijuana.
mentioned that
Maybe
they-
somebody could correct me, but I've never seen it.
and the reader mentioned that they would prefer that the way the cop is letting loose from the pressure of the job
It's to smoke weed.
is to chill rather than get amped up.
I definitely am on the. I'd rather my cops be a weed head than an alcoholic.
Because maybe that will lessen domestic violence.
That part, because cops
And there have
do
been
have
5
quite
of those
the
the last couple of years, domestic violence
Yeah.
around New Haven
with
cops.
alcohol connected.
absolutely.
I
Cops
also-
have kind
yeah.
of this, kind of special relationship with alcohol and violence. That is borne out, like it's
And
statistically
you never hear about that with weed.
significant.
You know, what were you thinking, Lucy, you were saying?
I think that the way we talk about weed versus alcohol. I mean, alcohol is you can use it as a substance, and it is addictive. It hits all of the addiction centers in your brain. It is it can be really ruinous. It can be very dangerous. And if someone wants to sit at home and I mean smoke a joint if you want to, or do edible. I'm always the daughter of a
legal.
doctor who talked about how bad it was for your lungs to smoke.
It's like have the
anything.
edible.
Like have an edible. Just have an edible. I don't know. Make some weed butter. Make brownies. Stay at home.
Actually, I think
And-
the
yeah.
solution is Uncle Nearest bourbon, but that's just my take.
I'm with you.
But
on
also
that.
have that at the house. Don't have
But
that.
unfortunately,
Don't go out and get plastered with your friends and fight them and do the things that
But
and
the
then come
options
home
are
and fight your
limited.
family members.
Even though it's legal in the policy, to go get plastered with your friends on the police force when you're off duty. They're not going to be able to do it at a new strip joint in Mill River. So they were gonna. This guy who had a strip joint.
Listen, those
on
people are
Hamilton
about to
Street.
set up in the parking lot. And if you want people protesting outside your strip club every day, you don't
So
want that.
Planet Venus was going to be this Las Vegas style, 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Bring your own beer and then do whatever.
Not BYOB.
And so they said, well, this is industrial zone. They
Ew.
needed some zoning help. Right on the edge of the Mill
Keeping it
River Industrial
classy.
District by like East Street, but it backs up into Jocelyn Square, which is with Cedar Hill, one of the forgotten neighborhoods in New Haven, right around Jocelyn Square Park. People live there,
Yes.
and they ring the park and they've been there a long time. But there's something that was so that the neighbors protested, and then it got withdrawn this week. So in the near future, there's not going to be the strip joint there. But it left me with 2 questions. But first, I want to know what you folks thought.
I like a good strip joint.
I like a classy one.
I don't mind. I don't mind a good
Some doesn't
strip
sound
joint.
classy.
I think I would have some concerns in a residential neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
or if it butts up against a residential neighborhood. Because I'm not gonna knock anybody who makes a legit living, right? I got no beef with strippers. I
Now, the-
tried it. I don't got no beef with it.
And
There
I will
were
say-
murders at each of the 2 clubs, like one a block away, and then the other one
Right.
mass shooting the other block away, run by this guy. He didn't, not while he technically owned it, but yeah.
I will say, if I could direct people to, so obviously this article that came out this week is great, but also Laura
The only one
Gillespie,
not written by your roommate in the whole New Haven Independent.
but Laura Gillespie also ran an article, I think it was 2.5 weeks ago. I don't know what time is anymore. But she
Me either.
she threaded this really interesting needle about a discussion that was happening around stripping as dignified work and stripping as work that made people feel empowered. And so I want to hold that up. And at the same time, I want to say, I don't know if these, I also feel for these neighbors. And I think about these neighbors. Markeisha and I have a student who, a previous alum of our youth arts journalism program, who lived around there with her siblings. And I think, well, do I want this in?
Where does she live?
She lives around Jocelyn Square.
Because I had a question about that.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about Jocelyn Square. Now, this is on Grand, right off Grand, between East and Hamilton.
So like by the clock shops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's always been problematic over
But
there,
anything
right?
strike you about that block?
But that was a strip place before, wasn't it?
No, they're talking about back behind,
Oh.
like where the lighting place used to be, but across the street as you go toward Jocelyn Square.
Oh, okay.
There's something a lot closer than Jocelyn Square there. There's a mammoth public housing development
Oh,
with lots
yes.
of
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
Not a single person talked about Farnham Courts. I guess that's a new name. But the housing development there, you have a lot of little kids who live there. They're not organized. They don't speak up at rallies. Their families are not tied into the neighborhood groups or Board of Alders meeting. Nobody was talking about it being a block away from hundreds of people, including lots of little kids. Now, Babs Rolls Ivy, I like a good strip club, says Harry. Now, I think we're all agreed here, at least in this room, we're not dumping on sex workers or people's freedom to strip. Where should strip clubs be? Was sort of the overriding question for me.
Huh.
Because in one sense, this is exactly where people think should be. An industrial zone, not near where people live.
I put it on St. Ronan Street. I'm serious.
Put it
Put it
Right.
downtown. I'm thinking classy
I'm with
though.
you, Luz.
Like make it classy. Like honestly, if it were a really nice woman run
Yes.
like strip joint.
That's not what this is.
I know it's not, but like if there were a case like for a strong woman to come in with reputable business skills to say, I'm going to pay, like our workers get not only their tips, but they get a dancer's fee, and they also are paid, and they have insurance, and basically they run the joint. Like we make money and they do too. Like it's that kind of partnership. Put that downtown.
So the woman who ran Hell, I knew her because she used to advertise New Haven Advocate when I was there. Then her star stripper lived on the first floor of the house I lived on. And she was on drugs all the time. She almost died a couple times. She lived with a guy who used to beat her up, who met her at the strip club. And at 3 in the morning, be woken up when she thought she was going to die, and he was hiding and beating her up. Doesn't mean that always happens. I think that I'm so much on the side of people who say sex work, women should control it. It should be legal. It's great if they're in charge.
Well, strippers are different than sex workers, so let's
Not always.
Well, I mean, but for the sake of this conversation,
Why?
because we're making the assumption that these women are sex workers.
But a lot of them are.
Yeah,
A lot of 'em-
but for this conversation,
the-
that's not what
okay.
we're talking about.
But even sex workers, I think prostitution should be legal. Women should be in charge of that too.
I'm
just saying it's not always a
I
happy,
think
pretty
women should
life.
be able to have an abortion if they want it,
Yeah.
but
My point is that I think we all agree that it should be legal. Women should be in charge of it. We shouldn't marginalize them. I think sometimes that discussion glosses over some of the unhappiness and the
But I
way
think-
that power
I
dynamics
think-
still come into play.
I'm gonna take issue with your causation association kind of argument, because if that were considered reputable work where you could be paid well, have insurance,
Protections.
protections, and not just protections, because if you're in the work of stripping, and let's just say stripper, ballet dancer, doesn't matter, you're both a dancer, you dance somewhere for pay, and the protections being that nobody can put their hands on you. You don't have to stay in a bad relationship with somebody when you got your own money,
That's right.
when you have your own insurance, when you don't need to be
And
with
sex work
somebody.
too, right? And we agree that that's too. If it were safe
any
and legal and
work.
protected.
And
That's
yeah.
any work.
unionized,
There
yeah.
are women who clean houses for a living who get beat up by their boyfriends because they can't afford to leave. So so I'm taking issue with that in the sense that those women find themselves in that work because that's another place
I
where you
agree
can
with
be
you.
exploited.
I agree with you.
right?
I had the causation wrong.
Right.
And another question here that people are bringing up is that these are not employees.
Oh, the whole
so people
contract
get
worker.
mad that it's gig worker and that's exploiting the women. They don't have the protections, enough money. However, the women, I think, want it because from what I understand from the interviews, I haven't done the firsthand interviews, is that they make a lot of money in that arrangement. Like that's an arrangement they're going into, and that we'd like the perfect world where women are always in charge of it, where there's health and safety protections and physical violence protections, and they get to profit from it rather than some skeezy guy who's like behind the curtain. But I'm not sure we're right about the gig economy thing. We know the gig economy is exploitive, but I think there might be some ways that the strippers seem to be okay with it there. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
All right, because that's what we talk about on Pundits. We talk about complicated, right? If it were easy, it would be 1 minute. Hi, everybody.
Listen,
Pundit
if we
Thursday.
could
See you
solve
next
the world, the Pundit
Yeah.
show would be a very different
week. But
matter.
here's an easy one: slam dunk. All right. The other night, there was a little show that took place, except it was nonfiction. It wasn't. It looked like a drama that was staged on TV as a joke on Saturday Night Live. But at Shepherd Glen School, there was a free for all about masks.
Oh, God.
Oh, in Hamden, right?
Hamden.
That was
So
hilarious.
So Hamden was going to have a meeting where
You
it
think
seemed
it was funny?
and it seemed
Yes.
Oh.
it seemed in retrospect that in fact there wasn't disagreement. Like people completely disagree in Hamden. They did the poll. Half the people say let's keep masks on for kids in school because most of the state now is remove masks. State says you don't have to have masks in school. But New Haven, I believe Hartford, New Britain, and Hamden wanted
Where all
to
the
keep
vulnerable
it.
people
Yeah,
live.
right. So they kept it, but then Hamden was ready to change their mind because even New York's changed it. Everybody. But they were going to change it, but the people still came to the meeting mad. In fact, they still had signs saying, call the governor to lift the mandate, which he's done. But
Oh, my God.
even though...
If you don't know what the current headlines are, don't come to the meeting.
But the
Just stay
deal
home.
was set.
That's the SNL.
They were
skit.
going to
It
lift...
did.
That was great. It's good. They were going to lift the mandate, but it still became an hours-long free-for-all with shouting, anger on both sides, hurt, right?
People
What
are
were your
just-
guys' reactions to that? Because I do think something else was going on.
I think something else is going on. I do because
Culture war.
it's just. I think it's a culture war. I think it's got its roots in racism. I think it's got its roots in like a caste system. You know, who are they? Who do they think they are? I mean,
For
it's
you to
just,
tell me.
yes. I mean, I think it's. It wasn't about mask.
I mean, it's also like we've been in these 2 years where like
Get a little
people
closer.
we've been in these 2 years where people like need a collective therapy session and everyone needs to have
We've
a
all
therapist
gone nuts.
or a
I
social
have.
That's
I've
that's
lost
where
it.
I was going.
We've
I
all
was like,
gone nuts.
people
And Markeisha
are
and I talk-
short-tempered
Yeah,
and
we talk about this with our kids, our journalism kids. Like the babies are not okay, their parents are not okay.
And the
one's
schools, people bouncing off the
no
walls,
one's okay.
attacking
The teachers
staffers.
are
Yeah.
not okay. Yeah, staff is not okay. Students are not okay. And then schools are in New Haven and Hampton, and I wish I had a better term for this, but under resourced. They should have more social workers in the building. They need to have more counselors in the building. They need to have more resources for administrators.
And this
in the
was
building.
adults here. I mean, even
No,
Vladimir
but
Putin's kind
also
of gone a
the-
little crazy, sitting at the end of his table and
He's
blowing
gone
up the
very
world.
crazy.
talking to
Yeah,
himself.
but I think like everyone's gone crazy. No one knows how to talk to
I'm
each
not
other
crazy.
anymore. Okay, well,
That's true.
I've
Bab's the
gone
only
a little
one.
bit crazy.
I've not
So-
gone crazy.
So Babs
But you're
has-
out and around. We see your stuff
Babs
on
has
Instagram.
kept it together.
She has fun. Yeah.
I've gone a little bit crazy. and-
I've lost it on a
but-
bunch of
but
occasions.
I-
Then wonder
I
what
think-
was that all about?
when
Also,
I'm out,
we
I
had-
definitely observe people behaving badly.
Yeah.
Like they're just they're meaner. They're
Yes.
like they're more demanding. Like it's ugly. Like oh goodness.
Yes, and then on top of it, when the bad man was president, we
Bad man, like she's five.
we made this into a political issue, right? Like
And it wasn't just him; it's the country. We've turned
That's-
everything
that's
into
right,
cultural,
that's right.
political issues.
And so we know.
Don't say gay.
We truly, and don't say or abortion.
I want to fly to Florida
yeah.
on an Avello plane with a outfit covered in the word gay.
in glitter.
In glitter. Mhm.
Yes.
Anyone want to join me?
And so I think
Except I don't like the flat
we
tweet. Oh.
we have these very basic things where if you actually talk to people who maybe voted for a different person than you, if you talk to them like one on one, you're like, oh, this person is not crazy, or maybe they are, but we're talking past each other at this point.
And there was something interesting going on. Like one of our commenters who's white,
Yeah.
said it's so strange for me because like everyone was white and brown who wanted the mask lifted and was upset, and everybody pretty much who wanted in that room was either black or liberal white, who said we want more protection longer, and the mean attacks like some of the emails were against black members of the school board, and this commenter said, it's so clear to me that there was racism there among the opponents, that they have this kind of right-wing agenda I don't like, but I felt they were right on the facts. And I'm there too. Like, I do think I don't like what the other side was motivated on, but I think in the first year of the pandemic, the COVID deniers and the Trumpies were wrong. Not about everything, but about most things. And I think in the second year, even though I don't agree with the agenda and the perspective, I think we were wrong.
What do you mean
I
we?
think it's
People
more
like
nuanced.
us who care
I think
about
it's more
cities, who
nuanced.
cared about taking COVID seriously, who cared about protecting vulnerable populations.
How were we wrong?
I think schools need to be open. I think more damage was done. I think that the masks were on too long. I think people can see. The other day I did read aloud in New
I
Haven.
still
School.
am at the why people can't. If Lucy wants to wear her mask and I
Oh,
want to
everyone's
wear
for
my
that.
mask, I don't understand why that needs
You know,
to be an
here's
argument.
here's my thing.
Because
Here's my thing,
beforehand,
Markeisha.
before the vaccine,
Everybody's got to wear shoes to go into any establishment. I don't see anybody out
shoe-
there
no shirt.
protesting
That's
shoes.
No service.
Shoes protect your feet, right?
And
They
clothes
your
protect
feet.
us from looking at
well,
your
the
naked
thing,
body.
Markeisha, in the first year, if you didn't wear
So I
your
don't
mask,
understand.
you were in danger of killing Lucy. But now, even
I'm
though
still in danger of killing Lucy.
but the numbers have changed a lot.
I
You're
think
also in
they-
danger of getting hit
they
by a
have.
car.
But here's my point. Like, this is the thing that always bothered me. And because as someone who has flown on planes in the pandemic, we just came back from Dominica not too many weeks ago. In Dominica, you have to wear your mask, period. Even if it doesn't make any sense. They're like, just wear the mask. Just wear it. You have to wear your mask. Fine. No arguments. We didn't start having problems with people and their mask wearing until we got on a flight in Florida to get back to New York.
New York.
And you have people who refuse, who I don't care if it makes sense or not. If the rule is to wear the
I
mask,
agree.
why not wear the
I
mask?
agree.
But here's the other
make it
thing.
a culture
Once
mark, that's
the
why I don't agree with
rule-
their tactic.
But once the rule changes, you don't like to wear socks? I like to wear socks. Why the hell do you
Of
care if I
course.
wear socks or
I mean,
not?
And they're being hypocrites
I
about
want to
their
wear
own
my
freedom.
mask, even if it doesn't do anything for anybody but make me feel good. Why the hell do you
But
care
that's
if I
the
wear
easy
my
argument,
mask?
Markeisha. Of course, they're
Why
being
is it-
hypocrites
But
about
here's the point:
freedom.
if we're gonna go to this place of our mandates are now you can do whatever you want, what I want to do is wear my mask.
Yeah, of course,
Stop talking to me about it.
of course. No.
If
And
you don't want to
and
wear your mask,
reminding me.
because here's the thing: I'm not gonna go up to you and say you should put your mask on. And I know that was happening. I know that was happening early in the pandemic. But the people who never wanted to wear a mask, who never did wear a mask, have no problem getting in the face of a
Yeah.
stranger and saying, "Why are you wearing a mask?"
Yeah, that's a hypocrite.
That happened to my dad. My dad is 5'11". He is huge. And some little white man thought, my dad lives in South Carolina, so he didn't fold that man up and put him in his pocket. He could have, but he didn't do that. Because he was like, but the man was like, you should just trust God. Sir, mind your business.
Yeah.
What does me going into Walmart
I'm
with my
trusting
mask
God
on have
right
to do
now,
with you?
and you still standing.
Right. Trusting God for me to not lay hands on you. Leave people alone. You don't want to wear your mask? Cool.
See,
Oh,
I
I'm
don't,
with you.
I don't
That's
get
easy.
that
Cool.
because I'm an opposing person physically. I'm 5'8". I'm 280 pounds. No one is gonna run up on me. Like they're just not right. They might
You don't
look
live
at
in the
me.
South. You live here.
They,
By
they
the way,
might look at me, but they're not gonna run up on me.
And
But
the
I've
run-up
seen
thing
them
is,
run up
and
on
that's
other
outrageous.
people.
It's sick. But you know that argument about God, I got that from Black New Haveners I voted out, interviewed outside Stop and Shop. Why aren't you wearing a mask? This was earlier. I said because God, God's hand.
But I will say,
And
like,
but you're going around asking them. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
you're going
you're
around
fine.
asking them about their mask
Right, they're not being
habits.
obnoxious. They're not doing anything wrong.
Right. Like, I'm not going to, if you're not wearing your mask, I might look at you crazy. But in a situation where we're supposed to wear our mask, that was the thing that always bothered me. The people who were so comfortable that the rules don't apply to them. Whatever the rules were, I don't care how stupid the rules are. If the rules are the rules, I get mad when I'm following the rules and other people think that it's okay
with
for
you.
them to not follow the rules. And if the rules change and I still want to take the extra precaution, don't worry about
I'm with
me.
you.
I'm the crazy girl in the back with the mask
And
on.
it's not crazy.
Don't
there
worry
might be
about
good
me.
reason. There might be good reason.
Right. So
I mean,
just
one thing we
I'm
also
like, do
learn
you
from
if
this
you
is
don't
that
wanna wear your
nobody's
mask?
sure they're right. That's one thing we got to learn.
exactly.
And Lucy's been trying to
if
get
the
it
kids are
right.
going back to school, let them go back to school.
Oh,
I'm good with that.
I was just gonna say, based on, so I've talked to a lot of kids, fewer parents but more kids, and some kids are not yet vaccinated, and I feel like they should be masked and people should be masked around them because that is a threat. And if they get COVID, I've talked to some kids who have said, well, if I get COVID, I'm not going to get that sick. One, you don't know that. And two, I don't know who you have at home. You might have a grandfather who lives with you. You might have a baby brother.
But then do you
who
think we
lives
should be
with you.
masked forever then? Because it's an endemic now. It's very low. According to the wastewater, almost nobody has it. But sure, somebody could get it and they have a sick person at home, or they could be one of the few kids who got killed the way they could be by flu or by a car. At some point, do you think the masks come off? Like, is there a point at which we say
I don't
if it's-
know. I don't know.
if
I
it's-
mean,
as
I
there
I
aren't
had
many
this-
cases?
It's really weird because
I don't know.
we
I
wear a
had this-
seatbelt.
I mean,
but
Darnell, but Darnell Golson
Yes.
said,
We wear
he
seatbelt.
was for strong protections on COVID, and now he's saying, are there any numbers we're going to use to say masks come off ever? Is there a point at which they come off?
Cars are safer now than they've ever been in the history of cars, and yet we still seatbelt.
I
We got whole airbags.
So should we wear masks all the time?
I will also say
That's a good
like,
point about the cars. And
it-
that's why I thought we need to wear masks. We need to wear masks. But should we wear them forever?
But I will also say, like, how much
I'm
does
still
a
at the
mask
why are people
actually
bothered about
bother
wearing
you?
them forever?
Wait, like, how much does a mask actually bother you? So I'm not talking about. So with really young kids, there are developmental arguments
Right.
as to why they are struggling with masks, and I hear that and I want to hold that. At the same time, like, why does it bother you that much? So this was in like November. I was in Co-op High School for a master class with the Dance Theater of Harlem. The students had masks, the dancers had masks, all the administrators had masks. I also had my mask. And Amy Migliori, who's the assistant principal and director of arts at the school, said, I think this is going to be with us for a while. I think it's going to be with us for 2 or 3 years, that we're going to have to keep doing this mask thing. And I thought, well, if that's what I do to keep the people around me safe, like, I am a member of this community. This is my home. And the way I feel like is I am responsible for her. I'm responsible for the 2 kids she has at home. I'm responsible for, I don't know, Jayla Anderson, who is in the 10th grade at Co-op and goes home to her mom. And I don't know if she lives with her grandmother or not. Like I'm responsible for all of those people because we are each other's.
So
That's
wait,
how I
to
feel.
Marquis's point, I don't think anyone's saying you should be hard on someone who wants to wear a mask.
Right. And I absolutely agree with what Lucy just said. I just want to lift that up. Like, I'm there with her. Like, why? I have this strong, like, aversion to this national kind of feeling that wearing a mask is like somehow the antithesis of what it means to be an American and having a dialogue with other people, that your mask is somehow a muzzle and it is keeping you from exhibiting your God-given right to do whatever
free.
you want.
Okay, I agree with that.
And so
but
I know where you're like, I know your point, but I think the triangle here is feeling this, like,
Yeah.
what is it? And maybe you can explain it. What if we had to wear a mask forever?
yeah, okay, I would not
What
like
would
that.
be?
I'd be okay
Why
with
not?
that.
I
Please
disagree.
tell us
I
why
disagree
not.
with you too.
Why
I agree
not?
with everything you said. I think
And I'm
people
not
should be
asking
able
you
to
to
wear 'em.
agree or
And if we
disagree.
needed
I want to know
this teacher
why you're
co-op to me
aversion
is
to
not
it.
my public health expert about when the risk, because you make a risk calculus in everything you do. You make a risk about whether you go in a car, which is really freaking dangerous, even with the seatbelt. I decide to walk on Whaley Avenue. There is one intersection I go in that you cannot prevent yourself from sometimes being in the middle when some crazy driver is coming out of nowhere and might kill you. You take steps to try to be safer. I think if we have to wear it for 2 more years, we should.
But you're
we should just
equating wearing a
assume that we
mask
should.
like us confining you to your home so you never go to that intersection.
Right, so we have to
It's
decide.
not the same thing.
But I could decide that I'm not going to walk in there. I'll take the bus. Here's the thing about masking. I think that there should be some public health basis.
Well, maybe we should make
for
it a
making the
religious
decision.
thing. Maybe.
No, I'm
Or
saying
maybe we
everyone-
should make it a public health
So-
that, like, any place where there are a bunch of people that you don't know. I mean, we essentially cured the
But you
flu
see, I'm not sure.
because of masking, something that we had never done before.
But we still have that flu. You go
we
somewhere
do
to
still
lunch, you can
have
get
it, but
killed.
if you wear your mask, you won't get it.
But there was a point at which, according to some of the studies before we got Omicron, that you were in more danger of getting killed by the flu than you were, and getting really sick, than you were if you were vaccinated. If you're vaccinated against both the flu and COVID, if you were going around town, you were at twice as much danger of dying or getting really sick from flu than you were from COVID. I think we're very focused, but that doesn't mean we're deciding to all mask against flu. I'm with you that you should be, if you want to. I'm with you that if there's a public health reason to mask, I was 1,000% for it. I'm 1,000% for the vaccine. I think that seeing someone's face and being able to smile at each other and understand and communicate is important. When I read aloud the other day in Morrow Sheridan to the kids, they were this wonderful group of kids. They were 2nd graders. And we sat around and read this book that talked about how music helps you deal with tough things in your life. The kids were completely engaged. We're all sitting next to each other, all masked. I would have loved to see them smile, but they're still trying to communicate with their eyes. And one kid says, that made me sad because this happened in my life. I said, really, what? I said, what? So the other kids couldn't hear him, so they started talking to each other. Within 20 minutes, these kids who wanted to have a conversation, who were excited about the topic, it was near impossible to understand each other, let alone communicate those important signals with
We
facial
don't
trying to
understand each
connect.
other now without masks, so I'm not going with that.
also-
If
yeah.
it'll save lives,
I think
I hate these whiny people about this mask. I cannot stand it. You wear shoes, you wear a seatbelt, you wear a damn coat, you wear gloves. We have no problems wrapping children up in coats and sweaters and scarves when it's cold outside. A daggone mask to save their lives is
If
what
it saves their
is.
lives, but if it's not saving their lives, but if they brought an entire generation of low-income students who don't have the private tutors, they don't have the alternative options during COVID.
I'm sorry.
But that's
They
not
have
the
their
fault of the
education
mask.
has gone
and
way
we've not
down.
had a problem with failure of low-income students up until this point.
They say the gap has gotten much wider
Oh,
since COVID.
but-
It's
But
not
that's
even
because there
close.
was a gap that already existed,
Right.
and
I
the
agree.
mask didn't cause that. The mask allowed kids to go back to school. Am I
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, New Haven has this beautiful, beautiful history, keyword history, of experimentation in its schools, right? Like, where the freak is that right now? We
What?
could have had schools
Outside.
outdoors for 2
Comer
years.
method, yeah.
I'm
Two
sorry, we
years.
did at Common Ground.
But we have a whole town full of great parks and all kinds of places where kids could have been instead of sitting at
So, you
home
know,
in
We
front of
got
a
a
computer.
whole ass green outside.
You know my old feeling what they should have done with the schools, and they should do with the schools. I think you should say yes to everybody about everything. That if a teacher's in danger or a kid, they should be able to either mask up or learn remotely. Or if the parent really needs to get to work and their kid's suffering being home, they should be able to go to school. And I think you should let principals and teachers at every school have all the freedom to be freed of all these stupid requirements and dictates from the central office. And every day they should just say who wants to come to school in person. Group them with the teachers and let them teach whatever the heck they want. And then whoever wants to be home or needs to be home, the teachers who want to teach remotely should teach those kids and regroup them, get creative, get support, and let's revolutionize education and make it work better and not say no to anybody.
Boom.
Let's have teams, and the ones who want to be outside, let's work with Common Ground or with neighborhood ambassadors and have them become stewards as part of their education for their neighborhood parks and learn that way with Solar Youth or something. Why don't we just blow up education, say yes to everybody instead of no to anybody?
We should have been blown up education, I don't know, 60 years ago.
And the
Or like
reality, I think,
100.
though, is
We
that
had an
if
opportunity
we
with COVID to
have,
blow it
that's
up.
what I was about to say, if we hadn't blown it up for the pandemic and this kind of desire as a culture to get back to normal, to go back to the office, thanks, Joe Biden, like we haven't been working from home for 2 years. Like, I don't know what he thought we were
studies
doing.
show people
And
are way
more
more
productive.
productive.
Okay, but I think I have to turn this conversation
Turn it
up,
up.
down, and delete
Uh-oh.
it because I just got a message from Harry Dross
We
Oh,
gotta
gosh.
go.
that I think has to undo everything we just said.
What did
Okay.
Harry Joe say?
Completely agree with Paul. You're listening to the Pundit Thursday with the best pundits in the business.
Proof that we are living in the great upside down.
Period poverty. Talk about people getting upset. So there's this whole movement, this wonderful activist in town, Catherine John.
I
She's
love
working for the-
Catherine
We love
John.
working for the
Catherine.
diaper bank, which we love. Them joining forces was kind of interesting. Anyway, there's a bill before the state that she's organizing for that would make menstrual products, which is the way people like me who don't menstruate tend to use the word. So I say, well, I asked the writer who's female, it was tampons and pants, whatever. So they should be free in schools, prisons, and homeless shelters.
They should.
Yes.
Yes.
People got kind of upset about that. I couldn't figure out why. They thought it was
Be-
like socialism.
For the same reason people get upset about the diaper bank existing. They do not understand that. I mean, it's like people cannot understand that you don't want to leave a baby in a dirty diaper. They don't understand how expensive
Women should
diapers
just
are.
show up to
And
work
for the same
in their
reason.
periods with no pads and
That's
just
right.
bleed everywhere.
Yes.
How you
that's
like
right.
that?
I think people do not realize how expensive menstrual products are, and they want to demonize poverty. It's everything. I mean, you see this in education.
I can
you see
speak
this in
to prison because when I served my time in Danbury, you know how expensive it is to buy personal hygiene products.
So they
on-
even soak you for that one. They even soak you for those costs.
Yes.
Boy, that's such a scam. The way they jack up
Yes.
prices in prison. Although now we got free phone calls, which
Yeah.
is good.
Wow.
Well, they had to fight
And they're
for
not
that,
entirely.
so.
They're not entirely free phone calls. Not entirely.
I thought they just made them free.
Well, not.
Okay, I'm wrong about that because they were the most expensive. The most expensive way to call anybody was if you're in prison, which was really sick.
And I'm going to challenge you because you said, as you personally are someone who does not menstruate, but not all people who menstruate are
women.
identifiably women. I follow a trans man who just had a baby.
Yeah.
Really?
It's beautiful. Oh my God.
Wait, so if you have sex time your surgery, you can then give birth?
If you still have all your organs, yeah,
Oh, trans man. I'm sorry.
trans man.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand
So
corrected.
some-
Thank you.
Yeah, some trans men.
I'm getting corrected a
menstruate.
lot, and I think I have to go back and think about all this stuff that Harry agreed with. Because the three of
You're
you,
like, I definitely
the
said
three
something
of you
wrong.
were telling me I'm wrong. Harry's telling me I'm right.
I don't think we were telling you wrong.
We're
We were
definitely
challenging you to to think about not just this. I get where you're coming from. I think you're thinking about it at a public policy level. How do we clearly communicate to people what is safe and what is not safe, which is the job of our government
And
and
how
our
do we
health
do
officials.
risk assessment?
And how do we do risk assessment? The reality is every person is making their own individual risk assessment based on the guidelines. Not for nothing, the CDC was really bad. As a communications professional, I've been very upset for the last 2 years because the ineffective ability of our government officials to communicate clearly. I know things were confusing. I know things were changing all the time. But there were just a few key messages that had they stayed on message, that we wouldn't have had the kinds of confusion and kinds of conversations
and not
we're still
cave
having.
to opposing.
Exactly.
And of course, while I totally
Opinion.
disagree with Lucy's public health expert who teaches at co-op, I do totally agree with you both that it's very important that we respect people's right to keep masking.
And I will say, if I can, she doesn't consider herself a public health expert. She's taking directions from the Board of Education, which is taking directions from
the
Maritza
health
Bond.
department. Exactly.
Yeah.
And she has to make a risk assessment for her building. She's bringing outside people from Alvin Ailey, and they have their own set of rules.
Oh, yeah.
We have our
Gotta
own set of
respect
rules
that.
at the Arts Council.
Yeah.
Every place is trying to make
And
an
like at our
assessment
synagogue, we
based
try
on
to do that because there are a few people who don't feel safe in the place, so you want to make sure they can come to shul, so you keep the mask on. But then again, they're now functioning society where numbers are so low that maybe they
And
should do
here's the
remote
thing,
learning.
can I-
But
Let me ask this
for
question,
people
though.
who are
Immunocompromised.
compromised. I mean, what is that? The numbers don't mean anything.
That's right.
Right,
I mean,
because for
because-
them, it's still 100% dangerous in them, or
Right,
very
but
highly
if they have
dangerous.
an N95 mask and they're staying 10 feet away and there's a high
But
ceiling.
they're the only ones doing that, and that's a bigger argument about how we treat people who are immunocompromised,
Yeah.
people with disabilities, right?
Right.
Which is that when it's safe for normal people to do whatever it is they do, well, the hell with everybody else. Like if you're not a part of this group of mostly safe people, then we don't really care about whether any of this is safe for you. Like if you die, so what?
Right.
And that's just.
So maybe we could all start
painfully
care for each
terrible.
other instead of using a pandemic to
And that's what
hate
Lucy
each other and
said.
fight. And remember that we've all
That
been
part.
wrong. We've all been wrong about parts of it. We've all been sure something's true. And scientists who are not bad for having to change their opinion because new facts emerged.
Right.
Because science doesn't mean you know everything. It means you do your best with the information at the time and then evolve. Why can't we all just said, we're so sure we're right. We're still trying to do the best we can. We're going to respect what everyone else is doing and not be mean to each other about
Absolutely.
pandemic.
And if you wearing a mask makes you feel comfortable, I want you to feel comfortable. Like that's what does it cost me?
Right.
This is what I've had these conversations with people about trans folks and their pronouns. I was like, what does it cost me to be kind to someone if that's
Right.
what they want to be called? I don't care
Yeah.
if you want to be called Blue Fly Sally on the sky. It's nice to meet you, Blue Fly Sally on the sky. Like
That's right.
if I can make you feel at home in this
That's a
space,
wonderful name. Did you make that up?
I did on
I
the
like
spot.
it.
It's
I
pretty
would
good.
I really hold on to that.
But
Something.
like, what does it cost me to be kind? Would you prefer me to wear my mask? Like, we can have those conversations, and they don't have to turn into culture wars. Like, if I see you not wearing your mask, I'm gonna just go in the opposite direction if I don't feel safe in this space.
That's it.
And we make those assessments all day long. And honestly, I like my mask
And
because people
honestly-
don't do things like, oh, you should smile more. Go to hell.
Kiss my ass with
That
that.
one.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna take, I'm
as a
walking with
woman,
my
I'm gonna wear
mask.
my mask.
So I determine what spaces I want to wear it in.
Yes.
There's some spaces I'm absolutely gonna wear it in.
Absolutely.
Some spaces I may be more relaxed. Like right
like
now.
here,
But you know what I miss most about pundits? Second most.
this little ending right
What
here.
I miss most was being all together because you're the greatest people in the world.
Oh.
I love you so much, all three of you and everybody else who comes on this show and talking about the stuff we care about. But I also missed that point where it's getting the end. I'm watching the clock. We got to end, and Marquisha's on
I
fire.
don't have a closer.
But you did.
Did
You
I?
did.
All
That's
of
why I
that.
put the music on.
Oh.
When Marquisha's going at the end, she's assimilate everything during the show, said a few things, and then the rocket goes off, and is the most perfect words in the world. And there's nothing else to say except thank you for joining us today on Pundit Thursday
We are back, baby.
back.
We are back.
with the best pundits, including Babs Rolls-Ivy, Marquisha Rick, and Lucy Gelman. Harry Droz at the control, going crazy, not being able to interject his points. But maybe we'll
Wait.
let him back on.
Agreeing with you. That's
Oh.
scary.
That's scary.
And I have to admit something else. I agree with Harry Droz.
Ooh,
So I
time
will
to
now go
now.
hide under a rock.
I don't know if we should bring this back.
We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day, all night, and all weekend long, with a mask, without a mask, in between. We love you all.
Got my good.